Good morning, everyone. Just to briefly introduce myself, I don't expect everyone to know our law firm, but so I'm the senior associate in Altius's EU Regulatory and Trade Department, as Sami has just said. And yeah, is this working? So the chair of our team is also in the room, Philip Vlaming, who sits there on the third row. Just to quickly say, I mean, we are active behind the scenes, so to speak. So we work with trade associations, with companies, but also actually with member states. Regularly, people are usually surprised by this, but we work with member states' ministries on elements of EU law in, basically helping them to understand the legal environment that comes out of this town. So this is a bit what we are active in. EU regulatory. We are also specialized in the following aspect of EU law, namely the external dimension. So hence this is something that we will be speaking about. This is the cover of a book that we've published a year ago on the external dimension. It has a chapter on the external dimension of the internal energy market. So it's actually a very exciting area, and it's very exciting for us to be here today also to present a bit of what we do. So that's 1 minute of my 10 minutes time just to introduce myself. So now I'll quickly go through the actual substance. So what I want to do today is just to take you through a bit of what we can call the engagements or the areas in which we are active or which we have been active, and then from a legal perspective looking at what we think are the main issues from an energy union perspective. So I'm also, given my own academic background, I'm also a professor at the University of Copenhagen now and then try to ask some of the more piercing questions such as what is actually new about the energy union. You'll see that this will actually be a question coming back now and then. The essence is actually we want an energy union. There is one union. There are 28 member states. And being a lawyer, I, of course, want to go back to Article 194 of the Treaty on the Functioning of the Union, which is the basis on which everything will have to happen. You'll see that the slides are a bit text-heavy, but that's just so that you can also read them afterwards if you want. You don't need to read all the details. I'll just go through it. But this is basically, our starting point. Okay, we have Article 194. Since 2009, we actually have a shared competence in the Treaty on the Functioning of the Union. Paragraph 2 is actually crucial here. Namely, okay, you have an EU competence to create an internal market, security of supply, energy infrastructure, but this shall not affect, essentially, the member states' sovereign competence over their energy mixes. And thereby you basically have the key legal starting point for anything that you will do in engaging the EU regulatory debate, whether it's shale gas, whether it's the market stability reserve in the emissions trading system, or whether it's the external dimension. So this is really the key starting point, and also for us as stakeholders when we're working with associations, when we're working with businesses, this is key to understand who can do what, which actor will try to go further in which direction. You can see I'm fairly abstract. We have the Commission and the Parliament. We also have, of course, the Council as a key actor in all of this. I've quoted there also here and there throughout the presentation the Commission communication of earlier this year on the Energy Union. We have, for example, very important statements such as we want one voice in global affairs. But how are we going to get there? On the basis of Article 194. In the slides we have a couple of thoughts, a couple of suggestions. There's a positive message. There's not only critique actually in this slide. But maybe to start with a point of, or at least a critical question, as Sami has said, energy union, the energy policy of the European Union is relatively new, but what we see here, the energy union itself is not that new. If we go back to the first strategic energy review in 2007, I remember this communication started with very heavy, important language referring to the 1955 Messina Declaration, the launch of European integration after the European Coal and Steel Community that led to the EEC. That was kind of the spirit back in 2007, and now we're actually back 8 years later, again the energy union, we're again invoking European integration. So the key question is, what will be new? Of course, there were important things since 2007. We've had the third energy package. So the question is, okay, you may doubt that we will truly create an energy union, but what will be the real substantive bite? Will there be a fourth package, yes or no? What will be the new governance structures? We've also heard, for example, at the College of Europe from the Director General, there will not be a fourth package. Do we need one? Yes or no? That maybe can be one of the discussions today. But in essence, so EU law, EU policy making, you can see it as a spiral. You know, things repeat itself, but hopefully we always get a bit further with every turn along the spiral. But anyway, it's always good to remember where you come from and what you've done in the past in order to move ahead. Okay, so now I want to go a bit to the internal and the external dimension with this title. Shale gas, something in which over the past 2 years you've all heard about. Let's be honest, the shale gas bubble has burst to a certain extent. Companies have noticed that it's not, either from regulatory reasons or from practical reasons, particularly feasible. But still, it's a very good example of what the Energy Union will be able to achieve, and in terms of the instrument that it needs. Because I remember that we were at the Energy Forum in Sopot in Poland in 2013 in December, and really everyone was expecting the directive to come out in January, or what was it, February 2014, January I think. And we got a recommendation. And most people in the room will also know how that happened. The pressures from certain member states that basically downgraded the directive towards a recommendation. So from a legal regulatory perspective, that gives you less legal bite, yet, you know, recommendations also are not legally irrelevant. But what is the message here from the Energy Union perspective? Boiling it down again to the tension between Brussels and the member states. What are the instruments that really we can expect, that we can to shape basically the Energy Union? And we also see that the essence of Article 194 creates this kind of, you know, difficulties to really have strong, legally binding, legal certainty kind of environments in the energy sector. That's the first one. You know, the market stability reserve introduction in the emissions trading system, it's a very interesting example as well of what the Energy Union could or could not be. Why? Well, we all know, of course, that at the business level, companies, sorry, did I press it? No. Companies have different portfolios, gas or wind or nuclear or what have you. And that the emissions trading system will very, very significantly impact in different ways different member states. Poland and Sweden are not alike when it comes to their energy mixes. So when you work with member states, when you work with trade associations, when you're on a certain side, you will either be very happy that your portfolio of allowances will just skyrocket, or you will be very unhappy because from a member state's perspective you could actually think, yeah, but you're actually dictating what our energy mix will look like. Because if you have 85% coal and all of a sudden allowances prices skyrocket, then you can actually think, yeah, but is the emissions trading system well in accordance with Article 194.2? Yes or no? So basically the climate direction of policy, you know, starts becoming slightly tense in relation to Article 194. You know, there's this balance. Okay, we want an environmentally pillar in our energy union, yet what primary law allows, you know, it's just a question mark I'm posing here. And I've been relatively indirect with which member states I'm talking about, but most people will actually know, right? Anyway, that's for the internal dimension. External dimension, I'm sorry, I'm trying to go quite fast because I know that Sami is quite hard on people not respecting their time limit. External dimension. In essence, you know, this is a bit of my hobby horse, but how can we speak with one voice when we have a shared competence internally? When you read through the Energy Union document, there's some interesting statements, namely that we will use trade more extensively. You know, as a lawyer or as an academic, you can then start thinking, okay, so does that mean that the common commercial policy will be used more in favor of energy objectives? And if you remember, common commercial policy is a priori exclusive to the European Union, giving far more significant powers to the European institutions, especially the European Commission. Maybe not DG Energy, but at least DG Trade. So that's then where we start looking also at things like TTIP. Is TTIP going to be used to export some aspects of the energy acquis, yes or no? Will there be a shift in which competences is used, which actors are active in the international energy debate in order to shape also the international rules? That for CCP. Energy interdependence clauses. Yeah, this is again another example that I wanted to give to remember where we are coming from, right? If this is, the top one is a quote from the Energy Union document, namely the statement that the EU may negotiate agreements with countries that are important from a security of supply perspective, and that it will somehow try to export the rule of law context internationally. Now this is again not new, so what you see there in the text is the second strategic energy review that already made that exact proposal, and that partially, I mean, at least in my thinking, led to the negotiations such as the Turkmen-Azeri EU negotiations on the Trans-Caspian pipeline. But so again, to illustrate, where are we going now? You know, as a lawyer, obviously, you'd be quite a fan of an new international legal framework that gives you a long-term, legally binding outlook. But will this actually be reality? Yes or no? This we need to look at. And finally, just to also signal it, yes, is this one. I don't know whether very many people are familiar with Decision 994/2012, but it's a legally very interesting document. It's basically something that was adopted a couple of years ago and that is up for review in 2016. Namely, so we've seen already this tension, member states, European Union, and as part of the external dimension of speaking with one voice, back in 2010, the European Commission made this proposal for a legal instrument that would lead to the European Commission reviewing intergovernmental agreements of the member states, especially in the gas sector, with third countries or between each other. And this decision is now actually up for review. I've included quite a couple of slides on what are the different articles, what kind of international agreements are we talking about. But this is something that especially the private sector will keep a close eye on, to be honest. Why? Because originally the focus was always very much on intergovernmental, so legally binding agreements between member states. But it's obvious that there's always a very close link between those agreements and the underlying commercial agreements. And then the question is, okay, what type of legally binding issues will arise? Because the European Commission has this idea of ensuring compliance with EU internal market law when they look at these international agreements. So what kind of legal certainty, what kind of legal impact will there be on the underlying commercial agreements? Conclusion. All right, so I don't need to go to the last slide, but in essence what we want to, the message that we wanted to give is indeed from an EU regulatory perspective is that there is a lot to find in the energy union, but that it's not very sure yet. So, but I was quite interested in the national action plans of the member states actually that we will see arising. The question will indeed be, what can we expect from a real union perspective? What can we expect from new instruments? What can we expect from a legal certainty and impact on business perspective? That's basically the key question for us.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Bart.